Welcome back to Why We Buy It, and today we're going to talk about the most impressive city that we've been to.
Yeah, the last cruise we were on ended in Singapore, and we spent an extra couple of days in Singapore, and we've been to a lot of places in the world, but nowhere blew us away the way Singapore did. It's on another level, right? Everyone knows Singapore because of the movie.
Crazy Rich Asians.
Yeah, Crazy Rich Asians, where you see the Marina Bay Sands, right? The huge hotel with the curved surfboard-like platform at top.
Which is gigantic, by the way. I didn't actually think it was going to be that big.
Yeah, honestly, the movie doesn't do it justice. When you're up close, you realize how big it is. I'll post a bunch of pictures of things we saw in Singapore throughout the video. But it's massive. It's absolutely massive. And it's adjacent to the Gardens by the Bay. And the Gardens by the Bay has the majority of real touristy spots that you're going to want to visit when you're in Singapore.
Oh yeah, like it has like the Flower Dome, the Cloud Forest, and
the Super Tree Grove.
The Super Tree Grove. Now, to make a point of it, we thought, okay, Singapore's the most expensive part of this whole trip that we took.
It is.
It was. But those attractions were actually reasonable.
Yeah, it's strange. You know, it's like you expect, because your hotels aren't, they're very expensive in Singapore. The food is not cheap in Singapore. You assume that the touristy things you're going to do, they're going to be expensive as well, but they're not. And something I'm going to stress right off the bat is you'll see a lot of these tour operators online selling you package deals to go see like the Flower Dome and the Cloud Forest.
You can do it while you're there.
Yeah, there's no reason to buy any of these package deals. For the most part, from what I researched, they didn't give me a better price.
No.
I got a better deal just paying when I got there, and the lineups to get your ticket to go in aren't very long. And they should have been. They were probably longer than normal because we were there during the Taylor Swift
era.
Yeah, the Taylor Swift, the Eras tour was there for like 5 shows while we were there. So it was busy in some parts of Singapore as a result of that, but it didn't really affect us getting around the touristy spots.
No.
And we went to the Super Tree Grove early in the morning and there was nobody there.
Yeah.
We were practically by ourselves.
Yeah, which was a nice experience.
We got to experience that night, and that night it was fantastic. If you can do Gardens by the Bay at night, do Gardens by the Bay at night. The way they light it up is absolutely beautiful. Vegas has nothing on Singapore when it comes to
not even close.
The way it looks at night. And we got lucky because that was one of the nights that the Taylor Swift tour was on, and people were either at the event or somewhere watching the event.
Yeah.
And we were at the Gardens by the Bay with like 12 people.
It kind of felt like, it was just for us.
It was ours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we would
private tour.
We would take that any day of the week.
I've seen these things online, I don't know how many times, in videos, in pictures. And I'm like, why do they call them super trees? But when you're up close, you understand why. Wow.
We fully recommend doing the Flower Dome or the Cloud Forest. However, Gardens by the Bay is like your own free
tour.
It's unbelievable, the size of the plants. It's like what did you call it earlier? The jungle of the city?
Yeah, it's like a jungle in the city.
It's ridiculous how amazing this is.
Yeah, and the way Singapore is set up is that it's got mature trees, mature palms, mature growth everywhere. So even when you're on the major highways, you don't really see the city.
No.
You don't, because the palm trees are so high that line these highways, you feel like you're in a jungle all the time, which is such a liberating way
for nature
to
people,
feel.
We absolutely loved it. It was like, so if we want to experience anything close to that, if when we travel, like we have to go somewhere really remote.
You gotta leave the cities
to get that feeling. So to have it and then have all the amenities around you was just incredible.
And what you have to understand is that Singapore is a very ecologically friendly city.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things they do to keep it that way. So first of all, I usually research like crazy when it comes to anywhere we're going.
Yeah.
But there are certain things I never even thought to research. So I never thought to research how a city runs.
Yeah.
Singapore, it's next level. It's how every city should be. Now, some people will disagree with me because there are certain things you do have to pay for, like a car.
Yeah. You don't technically have to pay to own a vehicle, because I will say their transit system
It's ridiculous.
is top notch.
So well done.
Now, those people that are like, our taxes are too high, blah, 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 their taxes go towards their transit system, and their transit system works just amazing.
Yeah,
Right?
bang on.
There's no delays, there's no no real issues, because everything just runs smoothly. Like,
Right? If you're a tourist, it costs like $1.
yeah, like it's nothing to get around. Now we took a trip to the night safari. We will get into the night safari, but we took a
Cab, a grab
grab right?
taxi.
And we were speaking to the driver, and she was like, having a car in Singapore is not cheap. And we're like, okay, how not cheap, right? And she goes, well, I'll start you off with this. She goes, how much do you think gas is? Now, they're on par with our dollar, with our Canadian dollar.
Singapore dollar and Canadian dollar is basically the same.
Yeah, so we were like, okay, well, Canadian's about $1.50 per liter. So we're like, okay, you guys are a little bit more expensive. So we're like $1.80. And she's like, try $2.90.
$2.90 a liter.
A liter. And I'm like, that's insane. And she goes, okay, you also cannot own your car for more than 10 years because they don't want any old vehicles on the road.
You can have an old vehicle, but you have to go through a whole process,
Massive.
special licensing, the whole deal to keep an old vehicle. But for the most part, vehicles are on the road for 10 years and then they scrap them
Correct.
because they don't want pollution-causing vehicles,
Right.
right?
Right. They want you to have those like electrical style vehicles.
Well, 90% of what you see on the highway are hybrids because nobody wants to pay the gas prices.
Correct. Right. And then she had, what kind of car does she have?
It's like a Honda Fit.
Okay, so it's
Similar.
similar to like a Honda Civic, right? And she's like, how much do you think my car is worth?
It's $150,000.
Like,
$150,000
that's
for a Honda
ridiculous, right?
Civic.
Like that's that you can't even fathom that. So it's like,
A minivan's like $300,000.
yeah, so there's not nearly as many cars in Singapore as you have, let's say, downtown Toronto.
They don't have traffic jams.
None.
The roads are always open.
None. And then it's like surrounding the highways, it's like you feel like you're driving through the jungle. Like,
Yeah, because of the mature trees.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, there's no road rage in Singapore. There might be bill rage, right?
Sure.
But the reality is the transit's so good that you don't
So
need
good.
to have a car. And if you feel like you have to have a car, okay, that's one of the major things you're going to have to pay for.
Yeah.
Housing is not as high as it is here,
No.
right? They pay less for their property. It's still high, but it's not as high as it is in Canada, which, to be honest, is ridiculous here. Our
Yeah.
housing is some of the highest.
Yeah.
But you understand why they're doing this. It's because they want a clean city, and the city is spotless.
Spotless.
It's spotless.
You barely find trash cans.
There's no trash cans, which is kind of weird, but I think that the fine for littering must be huge.
Yeah.
Speaking of fines, okay, so something very interesting about Singapore is that all animals
Are protected.
are protected.
Mm-hmm.
As long as they're in Singapore, they're protected. And to the point where the fines and the penalties for harming an animal or, say, abandoning your pet, which has been happening in Canada, right? You got people who, they adopted...
They adopted their dogs or their cats during the pandemic because they were bored.
Yeah.
And then they decided to just toss them to the side.
Well, because now the pandemic's over, they realize it's a lot of work. There's a lot of cost in raising an animal, and you got people who are just abandoning them. They're driving them out to the country and they're letting them out of the car and driving away. You do that in Singapore and get caught, it's minimum a $15,000 fine, minimum. Then you're also looking at the possibility of 18 months in jail or a combination of both. That's how seriously they take it, and animals have figured this out. The local animals there, they know they're not going to get harmed by people. They no longer see people as a threat.
Correct.
So we're walking through the city,
Oh my goodness.
okay, and what do we come across?
We came across a monitor lizard, which is, I found out, was very rare and actually poisonous.
Yeah, it's
So
actually an
I-
endangered species,
so-
and it's just walking down the street.
So I took a video, and I guess I was a little closer than I thought, because when I came back from taking the video, some guy goes, "You do know those are poisonous, right?" I'm like, "Thanks for letting me know now." And then we had an otter.
A Singaporean otter, which are huge, and that was within like 5 minutes of seeing the monitor lizard.
Yeah.
Like, there was in a major urban center.
Yeah.
You don't see this. We were walking through the Gardens by the Bay toward the cloud forest, and it was getting pretty busy.
Yeah.
And I had a family of birds walk
Go
between
through
my
his
legs and just walk by a bunch of people. Didn't even care that I was right there.
No.
Wasn't afraid whatsoever. It was such an interesting thing to have
You
happen
would
in a
never
city.
You would never see that here. Never.
Yeah, in Canada, that's like, seeing a monitor lizard in the city is like seeing a Canada lynx in Toronto here.
Right.
It's
just
never going to happen.
No. So that was,
Right.
it was cool to witness, but
Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah. Speaking of animals, so we did do the night safari, and I highly recommend it. It was such a cool experience. I've never been to a safari, we have the African lion safari that's during the day. But
It's similar. The African lion safari is similar to the night safari in Singapore, except the night safari is done in such a way that you're going to see animals you don't normally see because they're nocturnal animals.
Nocturnal animals. So we got to see hyenas, which were cool. We've never seen hyenas before. We got to see
right.
the lions. The lions were out and active.
Tapir, like anteaters.
Yeah, that was cool. Cope was a little upset because the hippos weren't out.
The hippos weren't out. I'm a big fan of hippos. No pun intended, but I was hoping to see the hippos, but I think they were under the water at the time.
Rhinos. The rhinos were out.
We got the rhinos, which was cool. And they were, it was cool. It was
was
definitely cool. It's definitely worth it.
Very hard to take pictures because you're not allowed to use your flash.
In the dark,
Yeah.
right? So it's not easy to get pictures. I'll share a couple of bad pictures with you. But another great thing about it is that if, we had my mom with us, she's a little bit mobility impaired, right? You can walk the grounds. They do have a pathway you can walk to see absolutely everything. But we took the tram, which you're going to see probably 80% of what's there, and it's very easy to just see it that way.
Yeah.
It's relaxing. We had fantastic food this entire trip, except for the food that we had
not eat at the night safari.
At the night safari, Singapore
you know what?
Zoo.
Show photos because I'm not quite sure what we ate, but it was not our taste. It was not for us.
Yeah, I feel like I gotta go to the bathroom right now just thinking about it. But that was the only time we had bad food. That was the only time.
Yeah.
So if you are going there, I just say eat before you
Eat
go.
before you go.
That's
Singapore has great food. It's just not at the night safari.
Yeah, and where we stayed in Singapore is the single most impressive hotel experience we've ever had.
You're gonna have to wait for that review because we're gonna do
Yeah.
that completely separate.
Right, it's very special. I can't wait to share it with you. Yes, we paid up. It's probably the most expensive hotel we've ever paid for, but we consider it a hotel plus a tourist experience, right? I mean, if you're spending between the two of us, it's on average that we're going to spend like $200 easily on like a shore excursion.
Yeah.
Right, through a cruise line. You add that $200, or you take that $200 away from where we stayed, and you're looking at the basic price for a hotel in Singapore, and it was worth it,
Totally.
right? We were quite literally in the heart of everything. Our backyard was the Gardens by the Bay.
Yeah.
So wait for it. You're gonna want to subscribe so you don't miss. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and wait for the most impressive hotel we've ever stayed at in Singapore. One more thing I want to talk about in Singapore, and it's one of the reasons why a lot of people go there, is the airport.
Oh my God. Okay, so the airport is ridiculous. Now, we left our hotel. Our time to book out was around 12 o'clock p.m.
Yeah, noon.
And we weren't catching our flight until 10 p.m. at night. And so we had 10 hours.
What are we going to do?
At this airport.
Let's go to the airport.
We're just going to go to the airport because we keep hearing everything's fantastic. I think we did a fourth
of the airport.
Of this airport. It was ridiculous.
We got lucky. We found a great place to have lunch.
Yeah.
Right? I'll put that in the comments for sure. If you're at the Singapore airport, you're looking for a great place to have lunch. It was fantastic. And it wasn't that expensive.
Nope.
Right? So we'll put that in there.
We
came across so many interesting things to see in the airport, some of which we knew we were going to see.
Yeah.
Other things
like the waterfall. Everyone's seen pictures and videos of the waterfall.
Yeah, it's the world's largest indoor waterfalls in that airport.
It's impressive.
Right?
Yeah.
What blows you away is that we did 2 mazes in the airport.
We did a hedge maze and a mirror maze, which we were like...
in an airport.
We had to do it, guys. We're in the airport, and I was like, this is crazy.
Right? Something that surprised us was there was a artistic video wall with a with a waterfall. We'll share it.
Yeah.
We'll share it in the video.
Yeah, everyone stopped and actually took like
Pictures of coming out of this waterfall.
I think there was a commercial being shot like in front
Ridiculous.
of this waterfall. It was ridiculous.
They have robot floor cleaners that we were not expecting that actually talk to you.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
This airport is like something out of the Jetsons.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's futuristic. It's Star Trekky.
Yeah,
That's how nuts this place is.
It was so cool, and we're like, well, I guess we got to come back to Singapore just so we can do the rest of the airport.
And if you do want to spend a couple of nights in Singapore and you don't want to pay up for a Singaporean
they have
hotel,
like these like pod beds that you can
Little pods.
book.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like they keep your luggage and you just
they're just big
It's
enough
just beds.
for you to climb into and go to sleep and climb out of.
yeah.
That's
so
as big
I guess
as they
a lot
are.
of business like people like use those quite often when they're traveling, in throughout of Singapore.
They're
so-
located at the airport.
Yeah.
Right? So you could, do a stopover in Singapore, book the pod,
Yeah.
go out to Singapore, see all the sites at Gardens by the Bay, the Marina Bay Sands, the whole deal. Come back, sleep in your pod, and then fly out the next day.
Perfect.
Right? It's so easy.
Perfect.
And of course, you can spend the next day, the majority of it, in the airport,
Yeah.
doing all the airport things.
Yeah.
So Singapore is nuts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's next level.
It's everything you would imagine it would be and 10,000 times more.
And you got to understand, they've done this in a short period of time.
Yeah.
Singapore is very similar to like Dubai that way,
Yeah.
where there was a time where, like in Dubai, it was a desert. In Singapore, it was just like a swamp,
Yeah.
right? A swamp with a little bit of jungle.
Yeah.
And they turned it into this super city. And the reason they were able to do that is because Singapore is one of these few places that benefited from a benevolent dictator, right? They had one guy in charge who said, this is how I'm going to do it. I want it to be the most impressive place in the world, and I'm going to spend all of our taxes and money on doing that, right? Most times you have a dictator, they bleed a place dry.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And it ends up as a dilapidated, horrible place to be.
Yeah.
People in Singapore are generally happy.
Oh
right?
my God! I don't think I met one angry person. They were all very pleasant, very pleasant to deal with.
I mean, it's a very rich city, right? Very rich city, but a lot of the basic labor, they're not Singaporeans, they're
No.
Malaysians.
Yeah.
Okay, because the Malaysian border is like 30 minutes drive into downtown Singapore.
And really, like for me, it's like it takes me 45 minutes to get to work from Toronto to Toronto.
Yeah, right? So the Malaysians, where they kind of get away with it is, yes, they have to have a newer car, but they can buy their car in Malaysia.
Yeah.
They can pay the Malaysian price.
Yeah.
And then they cross the border each day and they work in Singapore and they make Singapore dollars,
Right.
which goes a mile
More
in Malaysia.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of the labor, general labor, they're Malaysians,
Yes.
but they all speak the languages, right? Singapore has a number of languages that are being spoken, and you won't have a problem as an English speaker
Oh,
in
no.
Singapore whatsoever.
No.
That's something that's a little bit different in Hong Kong. Hong Kong, it's like a 50-50 thing. Singapore, it's the majority speak English,
Yeah.
right? Thailand, it's like 10%. Like every place is a little bit different, but you can get by
Yeah.
with English in Singapore, no problem.
Yeah.
But as a tourist, make sure you take it all in. Take it all in because
just
it's so
enjoy it.
different. It's so different.
Yeah, just enjoy every little aspect of Singapore because honestly, around every corner is a different surprise. And like honestly, like I wasn't even expecting to see that. Like the lizard when we did, I was like,
Yeah.
"What is that thing?" And Cole's like, "I don't know." And I was like, "He's like."
We got closer. I'm like, oh, it's a monitor
Yeah,
lizard.
it's a monitor lizard, and I was like, "Holy smokes!" Right? But it's just those crazy surprises,
And keep this in mind. Keep this in mind. We were in Singapore for 2 days.
that's how good of an impression they left on us.
In 2 days in Singapore, we had a family of birds walk between my legs. We saw a Singaporean otter and a monitor lizard. We've got pictures, we'll share them with you, in front of palm trees that are
I made Cope stand in front of them.
ridiculously huge.
Yeah.
Ridiculously huge. We saw all of the major attractions.
Yeah.
We visited the Marina Bay Sands,
Yep.
and we did 2 hedge mazes and the world's largest indoor waterfall at the airport.
Yeah.
2 days. So if you're going to fly to South Asia for anything, I don't care where you're going, If you can do a stopover in Singapore,
Just do
make
it.
it a part of your trip.
Yeah.
Tune into our next video, subscribe and click the notification bell. We do a lot of travel on this, but don't disregard our tips and tricks and reviews on some of the products that we purchase as well. And if you want to know a little bit about Toronto, we're going to add in quite a few tips and tricks about Toronto because that's our hometown and we know everything there is to know about it. Trust me, there are some places in Toronto that no one ever talks about that you've got to visit.
Yeah.
Till next time.